So yeah, why don't we go ahead and I guess just as a brief roadmap, we'll kind of talk about all the components of the application, and then I think we'll leave a fair amount of time at the end to answer any questions you might have. Um, just because I think the most helpful way to kind of talk you through the whole process is to help tailor it to you. So let's go ahead and start with an overall sense of kind of the statistics and what the process looks like. So for the class of 2024, wow, 2024 already, I feel old. There were about 45,000 total applicants. Of those, roughly 2,300 were admitted, and then 1,600 enrolled. And then if we want to get a sense of the demographics and the profiles of each of those students, there were 56 countries represented, all 50 US states. About 10% of Stanford students are international students, and 20% are first-generation college students. So it's a pretty diverse bunch, both in terms of national origin, in terms of their own family's exposure to college and higher education, and in terms of kind of the states that students reside in. So here are some important deadlines to keep in mind. We have restrictive early action here and regular decision, and we'll talk a little bit at length later on about what those two different things mean. But just a general note that the standard application deadline for restrictive early action is November 1st, and for regular decision, it is January 2nd. There is a separate earlier deadline if you are submitting an arts portfolio, which we'll talk a little bit about later. There is a last acceptable SAT test date for each of these. It's October, obviously, for restrictive early action, because if you take it any later than that, then you won't get your test result before the deadline. Similarly, it is December for regular decision. So, have this in the back of your mind. This is the absolute latest that you can take the SAT in your senior year. Of course, it's advisable to take it in your junior year. You don't want only one shot at the SAT. But this is just good to keep in mind in case you don't get the score that you wanted the first time and you want to give it another shot. Similarly, last test date for the ACT, it's a little bit earlier in the case of restrictive early action. You'll be notified of any missing documents mid-November for restrictive early action and mid-February regular decision. That doesn't mean that your application is, just goes in the garbage, but it does give you a chance to submit anything that's missing, which is really nice, actually. I think my counselor in high school forgot to submit some portion of my application, and Stanford very kindly notified me, which is very lucky for me. So don't worry about that, but of course do try to get everything in by then. The decisions are released mid-December for restrictive early action and April 1st for regular decision. That's part of what makes it nice to apply early, of course. If you get in, then and you can kind of enjoy the rest of your senior year stress-free. And then, of course, for both restrictive early action and for regular decision, you have until May 1st to reply and signal whether or not you'll be attending. And I think that's the same date for pretty much any college in the United States. So these are all good to keep in mind. You don't want these to sneak up on you, but of course you can find these on Stanford's admission site. Okay, so we'll chat a little bit about the difference between REA and regular decision. So regular decision is Stanford's traditional decision plan, and I think, it's important to note that most students and a majority of admitted students apply during this round. So some reasons why you might want to apply regular decision. Your grades are on an upward trend, so you think having an extra semester of senior year grades will increase your GPA and look more impressive to college admissions officers. Maybe earlier on in high school, you had a few bumps in the road, and you really think that extra data point will be helpful for you. So that's one reason. Another reason you might want to apply regular decision is if you're taking classes in your senior year that are more rigorous than those that you took your sophomore and junior year. So again, you want colleges to see that first semester transcript because you're taking all these challenging classes and you're doing great in them. So maybe you're taking more AP classes, more honors classes. That's another reason to apply regular. You're taking or retaking standardized exams. So, again, if you apply regular decision, you can take the December SAT or the November SAT in case the October didn't turn out that well, right? You want that extra shot. That might be another reason. And then, you might be working on some project or activity in your final year in high school. Maybe you expect you'll win some competition or something that will pad your resume. And then I think another reason that's missing here is just like you need more time. You for some reason got kind of a late start, or you really want to work more on your essays, or there's just something about your application that you think would benefit with a little extra time and care. In that case, apply regular, don't rush yourself to apply in November. It's always better to submit the best application that you possibly can, as opposed to submitting one that's very rushed and that ultimately kind of lowers your chances of getting in. So restrictive early action is Stanford's non-binding early application option. So what that means is that if you apply restrictive early action, you don't have to go in. You don't have to go to Stanford if you get in. But if you apply restricted early action, you can't apply to any other private college early. So you can't apply, for example, to Stanford and to Harvard early. You can apply early to public schools. That's totally okay. But no more than Stanford in terms of the early round. So why might you apply restrictive early action to Stanford? Again, a few reasons. The first is just, you've identified Stanford as your first choice. You want to get in early. You want it to be done with, and you want to know where you're going for the next 4 years. That's a great reason to apply early. And that's in fact what I did and made my senior year much less stressful than it otherwise would have been. Other reasons, you took a pretty challenging academic schedule in grade 11. You've done well. You're not really worried about that extra semester of data points. You don't think it'll meaningfully tip the needle. And then finally, you think that you got an early start. You were able to really write out a thoughtful application before that November 1st deadline. And there's just no point in waiting. You just want to know earlier if you can, and you've really identified Stanford as the place that you want to go. So ultimately, there's not really a right or wrong answer. It's not really about, gaming the system. You're not more or less likely to get into Stanford if you apply regular versus early. I think any application that would get you in early would get you in regular decision and vice versa. So it's really just about asking yourself these questions and trying to figure out, what is best for me and when would I be best prepared to put forward a good application. What have my grades looked like? Is Stanford where I want to go ultimately, or do I want to explore my options? So that's kind of a lot to think about. It's only January right now, so you have time, but definitely keep this in the back of your mind. And ultimately be thinking about which of these two deadlines that you're going to be optimizing for, because it's important to get a head start on all the components of your application. Okay, moving into the components of the application then. So here's a checklist of what is required to apply to Stanford. First is the coalition application, or I think more commonly the common application, and that's something you generally have to submit for any college that you apply to. It'll have an extracurricular section. This is also where you write your essays, where you fill out your demographic data, all that good stuff. So get started on that as soon as it comes out. I believe it comes out beginning of August. And really, you'll be doing yourself a favor if you get a head start on that before the school year starts. A $90 application fee. There is a fee waiver request if you can demonstrate need for it, so don't let that be a reason to not apply, but worth keeping in mind. The ACT or the SAT, writing or essay not required. And if you want to learn more about their testing policies, of course, please go to the website, but hopefully none of this should come as a surprise for you. And it's worth noting as well, I think here, that Stanford does prefer to see 2 SAT subject tests. I'm not sure if that's changed in recent years. They do prefer to see it. It's not required, but it's definitely worth, I think, taking if you can think of a subject where you do reasonably well in. Then you'll need a school report and a counselor letter of recommendation. Again, your counselor should take care of this. I think this is actually the thing that my counselor forgot. But yep, that's another component. Your transcript, unsurprisingly. Letters of recommendations from 2 teachers. We'll talk again a little more about the letters of rec and who you should be asking them from, general strategy there. And then a mid-year transcript by February 15th, just to show that you're not failing your classes and that they don't have to rescind your acceptance should you get one. Don't worry about that. You'll be fine. I think every year kids are like, oh my gosh, I got a B in like science or something. Am I going to get my acceptance rescinded? No, that's only if, something truly terrible happens. But this is just something that they want to keep tabs on. And then optionally is an arts portfolio that you can submit to highlight any extraordinary talent that you might have, and that is due again at an earlier deadline. I think let's see, right, October 15th for restrictive early action and December 1st for regular decision. So if that's something you want to pursue, definitely need to put that portfolio together early and submit it. All right, so let's dive in a little more to testing and talk about precisely what they're looking for and what Stanford's policies are. So I think the first policy that's important to note here is super scoring. So what that means is that Stanford will look at your highest score for each individual segment of whichever test you take and sum the highest scores together to get what's called your super score. So for the ACT, they'll look at all your subscores and focus on the highest composite from all sittings. So, if you got a 34 in math and a 32 in reading in one sitting, and then a 34 in reading and a 32 in math in another sitting, then they will treat it as if you got a 34 in math and a 34 in reading. They'll take your highest subscores. Same thing for the SAT. They will always look at the highest subscore for your reading and your math scores. Right. And then, right, of course, there's a new SAT. I think I took the old one, so that was just tripping me up for a second. But yeah, great news. So, in case for some reason, you're not able to get your highest score in all the sub-segments in one sitting, no reason to fear. Hopefully that should take some of the pressure off the testing for you. And then the subject tests, as I was mentioning earlier, are optional. But since they highlight your areas of strength, Stanford encourages you to self-report these results. If you've taken them more than once, you can report your highest score. And if you've taken AP exams, you're also welcome to self-report the scores in the application. And, of course, this can only help you. It just provides an extra data point for admissions officers to get a sense of what your strengths are. It's always good to try to take subject tests in areas that you think that you have strengths in or that you might want to major in. So, if your entire application is about how much you want to study engineering, maybe take the SAT physics subject test, for example, to kind of show that off. Perfect. All right, so that's testing. Hopefully that should be pretty straightforward. I know that that's something that stresses college applicants out quite a bit. It was definitely a source of stress for me. But hopefully, that's the kind of thing that you just study for and you take, and, hopefully after one or two attempts, you get a good enough score and you can move on to other aspects of the application and not have to think about it too much more. So just a little bit more, and this is kind of in response in particular to COVID-19. If you're not able to take the ACT or SAT, your application won't be at a disadvantage. If you've already taken it, but you think your scores are not, and you think the scores are a positive reflection of your preparedness, then you are welcome to self-report them. Your application will not be at a disadvantage if you choose not to report. And then if you have already had your official SAT or ACT scores sent to Stanford and you don't want those scores to be considered, you can email credentials@stanford.edu before you submit your application to cancel your official scores. So, definitely an interesting year, quite unprecedented. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing that word. But yep, if for some reason, you're not able to take the SAT or ACT or you were, but you weren't satisfied with your score, no reason to worry. And, you won't be in a disadvantage kind of in that regard. So yeah. All right, a little bit on the art portfolio for those of you who have artistic inclinations. I definitely don't, but respect for those of you who do. Yeah, so you can submit a fine art portfolio in the following media: painting, drawing and printmaking, photography, sculpture, and video, digital media, and electronic art. So you submit a portfolio, you can include an artist statement of no more than 250 words. And for each particular kind of portfolio, there are, of course, separate kind of, criteria. So for photography or for painting, yeah, so again, this is due before the application. If this is something you're interested in, definitely make sure to plan that ahead of time. But if you have a genuine skill or talent here and you think that it could help your application, absolutely, I think that you should take the time to kind of submit that. So again, good to keep in mind, but yeah, of course, not required. Okay, let's talk a little bit about financial aid, since this is another big thing that I think there are many questions about kind of throughout the application process. So Stanford is quite generous with their financial aid, I think, is the key takeaway here, and is very important to keep in mind. About 70% of students receive some form of aid to attend. 58% receive aid from Stanford, including athletic scholarships. And last year, 47% received need-based aid from Stanford and paid an average of $13,600 toward their bills, which, as you'll notice, is much less than the sticker price of, I think it's something like $70,000 for room and board and tuition. And then to get more specific about what the cutoffs are, for parents making less than $65,000 a year, there is 0 parent contribution required. So you don't have to pay anything for tuition or for room and board. And for parents making less than $150,000 a year, tuition charges are completely covered. So those families only have to pay for room and board, which I believe is around $15,000 to $20,000, something like that. So pretty generous, I think, in general. You could be making up to 6 figures and not have to pay tuition. So don't let financial aid be kind of a barrier to your applying to Stanford, because I think they're quite generous in that regard. And for many students, it makes more financial sense to go to Stanford than it would even to like their local state college. So, and of course, the financial aid application is a separate part of your application that you need to fill out separately, along with the FAFSA and whatever other aspects there are. Okay, so that was kind of reviewing some of the the very basics and the components of the application, and now we'll talk a little bit about the selection process itself. So, what is Stanford looking for when they are admitting students? I think the first thing, kind of unsurprisingly, is academic excellence. So they want to make sure that you're prepared and that you have potential to succeed at Stanford. They want you to challenge yourself throughout high school to do very well. So, that's the reason that you've been taking all those AP and IB classes and getting, tip-top grades. That's the reason you've been, excelling at the SAT and ACT and all your standardized testing and doing all the extracurriculars and the clubs, right? They want to see that you challenge yourself and that you can like exceed expectations, right? And as they say, the most important credential for evaluating your academic record is your high school transcript, right? That's one of the best things they have to go off of. It's arguably even more valuable than looking at your SAT or ACT score, because your transcript is the culmination of 4 years kind of hard work, and not the culmination of just one test sitting, right? So I think, this probably shouldn't come as a surprise for you. And I think that many students, in fact, who do apply to Stanford could handle Stanford's academic rigor and would be able to do well. So, to some extent, the application process is about luck, but there are obviously things that you can do to make yourself stand out. Another thing they're looking for is intellectual vitality. So the admissions committee wants to see that you have curiosity and enthusiasm that will let you, for example, spark a lively discussion in a freshman seminar and continue the conversation at a dinner table. They want to see that you have energy and depth of commitment, and that you'll bring that to your endeavors, whether that means in a research lab, as part of a community organization, during a performance, or on an athletic field, or wherever it is that you find that energy and that you have that drive for. And they want to see that you have initiative with which to seek out opportunities and expand your perspective, that your learning and engagement doesn't just end in the classroom, but that you're always willing to seek it out, kind of wherever you can. And if it doesn't exist, that you're willing to create those opportunities for yourself. Perfect. Yep. So, in addition to academic excellence, they don't just want to see that you've gotten straight A's. They want to see that you care about things and that you're willing to put in the extra mile to kind of create those opportunities for yourself. They also want to see, unsurprisingly, hopefully for you, extracurricular activities. So Stanford wants to understand the impact you've had at your job, in your family, in a club, in your school, or in the larger community. And they want to learn about the impact that experience has had on you. They would probably prefer to see exceptional depth of experience in one or two activities. That might actually demonstrate your passion more than minimal participation in 5 or 6 clubs, especially if, the one or two things you participate in, you're really able to achieve high honors. Maybe you win competitions, or you hold leadership positions, or you create a club that didn't exist before. And that might be more impressive, in fact, than just, being a member of 5 or 6 clubs, but not contributing very much to any of them. And, you might also, in addition to extracurricular activities, hold down a job or have family responsibilities. Those are just as important. Those definitely have a place in your application. So you shouldn't just think that extracurricular activities are limited to, after school clubs. They can encompass a wide array of things. And so this is important to keep in mind that, like the academic excellence is important. Of course, it's kind of like a given that you need to do well in classes and take challenging classes. But in addition to that, you need to have impact outside of the classroom, and you need to, participate and show kind of that intellectual vitality through the things that you do after school. So I think these are all really important to keep in mind. And then another thing that Stanford considers in their selection process is context. So they're always willing to pay attention to unique circumstances that apply to you, right? They'll take into account your background, your educational pathway, and your work and family responsibilities. So, and by focusing on your achievements in context, Stanford evaluates how you have excelled in your school environment and how you've taken advantage of what's available to you in your school or in your community. So, for example, if your school only offers 7 AP classes, Stanford's not going to be like, wow, this kid only took 7 AP classes compared to this other applicant who took 13. They'll recognize that was what was available to you. You made full use of what you were able to do kind of in that context. And they'll evaluate you in that context. And I think, a good example of paying attention to unique circumstances is the fact that Stanford's been flexible about standardized test results in response to COVID-19. That's a perfect example of the fact that they're willing to, to kind of meet people where they are and focus on their achievements in context. So, I think that's really helpful always to keep in mind, and maybe, should help to make things a little less stressful. So definitely good to keep in mind. All right. The essays, everybody's favorite. This I think is for many people kind of maybe the scariest part of the application process. For me, it was definitely the most time consuming and required the most, careful thought. I think you'll find a lot of the other stuff is relatively straightforward. You've been in school, so you have a transcript, right? The SAT, ACT, yeah, of course you have to prepare for those, but you take it and you're done. The essays are really where you're able to sort of shine through beyond just numbers and in your GPA and your SAT score, right? And to kind of show the admissions officer who you are and what you care about and the kinds of things that you would do at Stanford and why you would be a good fit for the school. So, overview of the essays, there is, of course, the Common App main essay, and this, again, is something that you'll submit to every school you apply to. So, that's one to definitely spend a lot of time on. And then, in particular, Stanford requires 3 supplemental essays of up to 250 words, and then 11 short answer questions, and these are about 10 to 150 words each. Right. So the first longer supplemental essay is the Stanford community is deeply curious and driven to learn in and out of the classroom. Reflect on an idea or experience that makes you genuinely excited about learning. So, this is asking you to show how you've taken responsibility for your own education. It could be about a variety of topics ranging from, computers to Jane Austen. And I think, an important way to kind of approach all of these essays is to always ask yourself, what am I trying to tell the admissions officer? And what are they trying to learn about me? Why did they give me this prompt? What kind of information are they trying to get out of me? So, I think this goes back to the question of intellectual vitality, right? One of the things that Stanford is optimizing for. They want to see what it is that you care about And more importantly, they want to see that you have interests that you're willing to take, again, outside of the classroom, right? That you're not just a good student, but that you're going to contribute to the community. And that, you can do more than just study and get good grades, right? Because ultimately they care about the contributions that you'll make outside of just the educational context itself. So, this is a really great chance, I think, for you to kind of highlight something that you care a lot about. It could be something that's all over your application, right? Maybe you're a big researcher, you do a ton of research kind of at the local university. And that's something you care a lot about. Maybe you also teach local elementary school students about that same topic. And maybe in that case there's a very obvious topic for you to write about. Perfect. You can go and talk about how it is that interest was kind of sparked in you and how you've pursued it. And even though it's kind of listed in your extracurricular section of your application, this provides a chance for the admissions officers to see the more human side of it, right? To understand why you care about it and how that passion was started. And kind of like the intellectual vitality that you have and the passion that you have for that subject. And how you'll continue to pursue that subject at Stanford. Or it doesn't have to be something that you spend a whole lot of time on in your extracurricular component of your application. It could be something a little weird that they wouldn't have guessed about you. Maybe you have a deep passion for, I don't know, juggling. Maybe that's not a great example or a great topic. But maybe there's something that you have a real passion for. Maybe it's a particular language that you've been learning since you were like 8 or 9. Whatever it is, be sure to not only talk about the passion itself, but to also talk about how you've pursued it, how you've demonstrated your interest in it, and why it's important to you. I think at the end of the day, that's going to show, again, you want to show the admissions officers that you have that kind of passion, that you're willing to pursue it kind of to the ultimate end, right? So again, always be thinking about what you're telling admissions officers. I think this is a really great way to kind of do that and to hone in on one particular thing that's important to you. The next essay topic is virtually all of Stanford's undergraduates live on campus. Write a note to your future roommate that reveals something about you or that will help your roommate and us know you better. So this is kind of like the fun essay topic, I think. This is one where you can really show a little more about your human side, where you can talk about your personality, what time you wake up, what time you go to bed, what kind of food you like to eat, weird quirks about you, things that your siblings find annoying about living with you. It's a great chance to kind of just show that, you're not just, a collection of numbers and extracurriculars, that you have your own personality. And that you'd be a fun person to get to know, right? 'Cause Stanford doesn't just want like amazing students; they also want people who are like personable, and who get along with each other, and who would make good friends and companions and peers, right? I think some general words of advice. This topic is generally best when it is done on one topic. So really diving deep into like a particular aspect or two about what you'd be like as a roommate, rather than jumping all around and trying to hit every aspect of your personality, because that's probably not possible in 250 words anyways. And I think this is a topic that lends itself particularly well to using humor and to being a little more informal. Again, this is meant to be addressed to somebody else your age, to your roommate. And I think many of the most effective roommate essays are funny in some sense or self-deprecating. Um, and again, this is a chance to just kind of show like weird things about yourself, like your favorite music or your favorite movies or whatever, that the admissions officer would have no other way of knowing. So resist the urge to, humble brag about yourself, or to just relist all of your extracurriculars and your GPA and all that. You've already done that. You've submitted your application. They know. That's not what this prompt is about. I think some people find this prompt to be a little harder to write. The other prompts are a little more straightforward. Okay, of course, yes, of course I should talk about being excited about learning. Whereas maybe, it's a little more tricky to really talk about yourself in this more informal context. But I think this was personally my favorite essay. I thought it was a lot of fun to write. So yeah, definitely take your time with this and think about, what you would want to convey and what a roommate should know about you. And then the final supplemental essay, tell us about something that is meaningful to you and why. The answer to this can be anything. It's very broad, and in that sense, it's another tough one. Could be anything: bird watching, baseball, ballet. Just talk about what makes you an interesting person that other students would want to know. And again, you're trying to tell the admissions officer something about you and something that you care about, and that hopefully will signify why you would be a good contribution to their campus life. Always important to keep in mind. Um, Certainly take your time and brainstorm quite extensively on this one, because there's so many ways that you could go, right? You could do a very serious essay, that's again about, maybe research or volunteering. You could write about music. You could write about something lighthearted. You could write about family, right? There's so much that you could talk about here. I think it's important to really think through all the options and pick the one that rings the truest to you. Then we have short responses. These are much obviously shorter. They are 50 words. Briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities or work experiences. What is the most significant challenge that society faces today? How did you spend your last 2 summers? What historical moment or event do you wish you could have witnessed? And name one thing you're looking forward to experiencing at Stanford. So, these ones, they're shorter, but definitely still try to put some thought into them. This first one is a great chance to kind of go on at length about an extracurricular that you think is particularly impressive or that you really want to highlight to the admissions officers. Significant challenge society faces today, be honest about this. There's tons of options. I think there's no shortage of problems in the world. It might behoove you to pick one that relates at least somewhat to something that you've done. So, maybe if you've done a lot of advocacy around, LGBT rights, for example, you could mention that, the mistreatment of LGBT students is a significant challenge. That's just one way that you can tie this back to the rest of your application. Historical moment or event you wish you could have witnessed, pick whatever you like. Maybe try not to pick something that you think tons of other students will pick. And then one thing you're looking forward to experiencing at Stanford, be creative with that. Look up some of Stanford's many traditions. There's no shortage of things you can talk about there. Letters of recommendation. So these are pretty important. It's recommended that you request letters from grades 11 or 12, because those are the teachers that, will probably remember you, given that you took their class more recently. And then it's also generally recommended that you request one letter of rec from an English or social studies teacher and one from a math or science teacher, just to show how well-rounded you are. And then you can submit an additional optional letter from somebody who knows you well. This can be another teacher if you want. It can also be a coach or a club supervisor, or somebody you did research with or an internship with or what have you. Purely optional, but it's great to include if you can think of somebody who would write a good letter of rec for you. And I think an important piece of advice here is to just try to get these, ask for these ahead of time. Your teachers will probably be writing lots of these for lots of students. So, if you can ask them at the very beginning of the school year, even better, so that they really have time to kind of tailor it to you and to write the best possible letter of rec that they can for you. So definitely, plan ahead for that. Do not ask them at the last second. And the interview. I think some of you might have these coming up already. So all interviews worldwide will be conducted via video chat for this application cycle. Very interesting. You'll mutually agree on some platform: Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, Google Hangouts. In a typical year, these are conducted in person, and no interviews are offered on the Stanford campus. So, things are changing rapidly due to COVID. So yeah, just some general thoughts on the interview. It's a two-way exchange, so it allows Stanford to learn